Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Greg, we have food box news.
Yeah, we tried to avoid it last week, but we can't get away from it now. We've got some produce box updates, and it was kind of a good news, bad news. Good news, USDA did confirm that the available products to go in the produce boxes is basically unlimited. It's not limited to those 5 that are listed on their TFAP approved products page. So that's good. And
does that mean unlimited domestically produced produce?
it does not say that specifically, but that is still the case. Only domestic is approved for this program, because any government program, I think, must be domestic.
Okay.
So it's not on the page, but I do believe that is still the case. And they have they say 3 to 5 pounds of vegetables, 3 to 5 pounds of fruit, and at least 2 locally grown items when in season. So that would help out local farmers if they don't have access to those markets. But we're in a way different situation than we were a year ago, where there aren't going to be nearly as many producers who can't find markets. I mean, retail is strong, food service is growing. We're going to talk about that next. And the budget on this thing is teeny tiny. It is less than $10 million for a government national program. Less than $10 million.
That is a huge bummer.
Billions of dollars involved in the produce box program last year. But for another example, I tweeted about this. USDA added $1 billion a month in SNAP benefits and $490 million for WIC payments. Those $1 billion per month. This program is all summer long through the end of September for less than $10 million.
Why are they even doing this, is what I want to know. This sounds like a bunch of hassle, and no one's going to want to do it. I mean, we've heard from some of the people who apply for contracts, and I'm sure that it's great for their business to pick up a little bit of extra business, but what is the potential benefit to this? It just doesn't seem like it's worth the hassle to go through.
Well, I wouldn't presume to read their minds. I know it was a big bonus both to their business, and they felt like to their communities. Everyone I talked to who participated in the program last year, my goal is to talk to some of those producers who have contracts once they get up and going with this program, and see what they have to say about it now compared to the produce box or the food box program under the previous administration's USDA. So we'll see this summer. I wouldn't presume to say that they're wasting their time. I mean, they all bid for them, and so they certainly consider it worth their time.
Well, and it seems like the food box program just keeps getting extended and extended and extended. Maybe they're hoping that since they didn't award the pet peeve of if you don't use the money, it goes away. They only awarded $9 million worth of contracts out of the $20 million that was previously announced. So maybe they're hoping that other 10 million and change comes trickling in over the summer. But still, it just seems like, wow, okay.
I don't think it's not set up that way. I don't think that's going to happen, because last year, USDA made the decision, and then the people put contracts in and they filled them. The way it's going this time, it's going through states' TFAP budgets, and they've already set their bids in through the end of September. So the states would have to decide that they want to allocate more money, and then USDA would reimburse that, I guess. But I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be really surprised if that happened.
Coming from the state I live in, a state choosing to participate in a federal program, no.
Well, 42 states are participating, so I'm sure that is a nice mix of red and blue states.
Let's move on to food service, because there's great news in food service. So I caught a clip from Mad Money on CNBC with the CEO of Cisco, and he was talking to Jim Cramer about He says that the pandemic recovery is here, according to their business. Most of the unique operators that they're working with are tracking ahead of 2019 numbers, and in states that are fully open, they're actually tracking double-digit ahead of 2019 numbers. And we kind of threw back and forth because it's like, well, did Cisco poach some business off of anyone else? Because he did mention that Cisco's salespeople had worked hard to, push business and get more business. So it's like, wait a minute, how are you tracking that far ahead? Is it because you picked up more customers at the expense of someone else in the market? But then today we had a news release from Technomic that also shows steady improvement for food service. So
it's growth, but it's still, their index is based on 100 being normal. They're still below that level. So Technomic's numbers show gradual improvement this year, basically going from 82 to 86 to 94 to 94.6 in April. So it's getting back close to 100. But it's easy to conclude without digging into the numbers, making some assumptions. If Cisco is up 10% in a market that is still down, they are getting it at the expense of rivals. And as we've seen with small businesses across the country that had tougher times dealing with lockdowns and rules than the big businesses that both had basically different rules and the ability to absorb short-term losses, as NRA said, 10% of restaurants went out of business.
Yeah. Although I'm seeing different maps coming up of restaurants that have opened since the pandemic lifted. And I don't know if it's because I'm in Texas again, and we have a lot of growth in restaurants. I will say that the Technomic index, if you compare it year over year, last April was actually 49.1%. And this April is 94.6%. So that's actually, pretty great news, but not surprising to anyone, especially when we look at retail numbers and things like that. So that, shows some positive outlook. And we haven't even gotten into, today was the last day of school for my kids. Your kids were out a couple of weeks ago. People are going to hit the road for the summer, and it's going to be busy all summer long, I'm sure, everywhere you go.
Yeah, and one of the pieces of analysis I've seen is that quick serve restaurants are not returning as quickly as some other food service because they relied a lot on people both doing work travel and just driving to the office and going out to lunch. And that's not happening with so many people working from home, even though we are recovering from this pandemic. But this summer, when people are on the move again, there's a good chance that they'll start visiting some of those quick serves, and some of those numbers can rebound.
I just saw a really great article, a whole package in Eater. I don't know if you follow them. I follow them for their every food trends predicted for every year. And they have an amazing just ode to gas station food. That all across the country, all the different gas stations, and of course they got a huge shout out for Wawa, which Wawa.
You got to wear your Buc-ee's hat now.
I know, right? They did have a shout out for beaver nuggets from Buc-ee's, but people should check that out, and I'll link it to this article so that you can check it out when you get ready for your road trips. All the best gas station food. I think that the quick service restaurant recovery that is slower is also probably because they didn't see such a slump in business, because every drive-through that I saw going through the pandemic, if the restaurant was open with a drive-through open, the line wrapped around the building. If you think about Chick-fil-A's through the pandemic, Cane's, Raising Cane's at 5 o'clock in the evening had a line 2 circles around the whole restaurant. So that food lends itself very well to on the go and doesn't have to be plated and presented, which doesn't eat as well when you're trying to do it as takeout. So those restaurants didn't suffer as much. So of course their curve is slower for recovery. I think what we're going to see the huge recovery in is like Sunday brunch, all of those celebration meals, happy hours, that kind of place where you go and gather and hang out. Those are the places that are just going to have a roaring summer.
I think so too, but I think we saw predicted earlier in the year as they were projecting toward what food service recovery might be. They did talk about buffets still being in trouble, and I kind of think that's going to be the case. I think people are getting to a comfort level where they can be in a restaurant, they can be in a bar, they can be in an arena, a concert. I'm not sure they're going to go for buffet style restaurants. You're too close to
Right.
people, you're too close to open food. I think that recovery is going to take a little longer.
Well, and even one of the most noteworthy bankruptcies that we've had over the last couple of weeks was the parent company of Furs, which is and I can't remember who else they have, but a bunch of, they couldn't have been popular before the pandemic, that popular. Ryan's, I think it was. Those are all huge buffet places. And I don't see that business coming back as strongly. And even retailers are talking about not bringing back the deli the same way. If you go into a Whole Foods right now, there's not the self-service deli stuff that you saw before. The H-E-B near my house actually brought back the soups, but everything else is still a manned person dipping your food for you instead of having a free-for-all. And I've seen a lot of memes about how people across the world think Americans are weird for having self-service buffets because it's such a germ trap, I guess. So that stuff may not recover.
Yeah, from a food safety aspect, that really does make sense. And on the opposite, as we talked about last week, self-checkout. I mean, you can just shift your labor. You're touching your own food. So that, I mean, as a consumer, that makes sense to me too. And as someone observing the business and participating in it, that's a way to just shift labor to someplace that makes more of a difference.
Yeah. The one thing though that you see from it is packaging, and we're seeing a lot of different developments in packaging and more sustainable options or more compostable options. And I don't think people are gonna, as we make the rebound back into buying more like products like this, I think people, I don't know, I'm going off the rails here about, you know, plastic packaging, and if everyone's gonna wanna keep buying that clamshell of deli prepared stuff. I think
it was a pandemic only trend that's going to go back to where we were before, because the science clearly shows that people cannot get sick from the food, and so the packaging is unnecessary. And it was going in a good way of less packaging before the pandemic, and then it reverted. And I think we're already starting to have stories about the less packaging and compostable or cardboard packaging where we used to see plastic. I think that trend's going to come back quickly, and that's a good thing.
And that actually kind of is a teaser for a story we're going to have next week about a company down the road from me that is doing some edible coatings for shelf life extension. So you can stay tuned for that. But for now, that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up.
Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day, and everyone say hi to Chewy. Chewy! Chewy! Like he's like, what? I'm sleeping.